It was just another Tuesday morning, or so Lisa Jefferson thought. The newly appointed chief of police for Rivertown guided her black sedan down Interstate 47, the crisp autumn air streaming through her open windows. This drive was a ritual she cherished. It was her pocket of serenity before the chaos of the day began, a time to gather her thoughts and remind herself why she dedicated a decade of her life to law enforcement. Though the weight of her new title sat heavily on her shoulders, Lisa wore it with humility. She was determined to lead with integrity, not arrogance. But as she approached exit 13, her tranquility was shattered. Blue and red lights flickered in her rearview mirror, a police cruiser closing in fast with sirens wailing. Confused, Lisa glanced at her speedometer, right on the mark. Her car's registration was up to date, and she was certain she hadn't done anything wrong. Yet, the cruiser persisted, forcing her to pull over to the shoulder. Brows furrowed, Lisa complied, her years of experience reminding her to stay calm. Through her side mirror, she watched two officers emerge from the cruiser. Their movements were deliberate, their uniforms impeccably pressed, and their faces obscured by dark sunglasses. The taller one, a man with a buzz cut, approached her window and tapped it sharply with a flashlight. Lisa rolled it down, offering a polite yet firm, "Good morning, officers. Is there a problem?" The man leaned in, his expression cold and unreadable. "License and registration," he demanded, ignoring her question. Lisa's fingers moved methodically as she retrieved her documents, but her mind raced. Why had they stopped her? She handed over her license and registration, keeping her composure intact, even as the second officer, shorter, stockier, and visibly more irritable, circled the car, his eyes scanning her like a predator, sizing up prey. "What's your business here?" the gruff officer barked from the passenger side. Lisa met his gaze, her voice steady. "I'm heading to work." The taller officer, his name tag reading Officer James, studied her license with exaggerated care. Meanwhile, his partner, Officer Grady, as she gleaned from a glance, kept pacing, his boots crunching against the gravel, his hand resting conspicuously close to his holster. "You work around here?" James asked, his tone teetering on hostility. "Yes," Lisa replied, offering no elaboration. Years on the job had taught her not to over-explain, especially in situations like this. James arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "We'll see about that," he muttered, his voice dripping with doubt. He stepped back, joining Grady for a hushed exchange. Lisa remained still, her fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the steering wheel. She wasn't scared, not yet, but something about their demeanor was off. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension, each second dragging as the officers whispered, their eyes flickering toward her like a pair of vultures circling overhead. Finally, James returned, his jaw set and his eyes hard. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. Lisa blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?"
"You heard me," he snapped.
"Step out of the vehicle." She held his gaze, her tone measured. "Can you at least tell me why?" Grady, still lingering on the other side, interjected impatiently.
"Out. Now."
Lisa's jaw tightened, but she complied, her movements deliberate as she opened the door and stepped out. The officers closed in, their hands hovering over their holsters as though bracing for a fight. Standing tall, Lisa met their scrutiny with calm defiance. "Would either of you care to explain what this is about?" she asked, her voice steady but commanding. The silence that followed wasn't just unsettling, it was deafening. James's lips curled into a faint smirk. "We've got reports about a vehicle matching this description being involved in illegal activity." Lisa blinked, her disbelief evident. "Illegal activity," she repeated, her voice sharp with incredulity. "What kind of illegal activity, exactly?" Grady, now standing rigid with his arms crossed, cut in with an air of superiority. "We'll be the ones asking the questions." It wasn't the first time Lisa had faced authority figures acting out of line. As a Black woman in America, she had weathered her share of unnecessary confrontations. But this was different. It felt deliberate. Personal. The thought gnawed at her as she watched the officers rifle through her car with practiced indifference, their smug expressions betraying the satisfaction they seemed to take in the charade. Lisa said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. Her eyes stayed locked on them, unyielding, as though daring them to dig deeper. In her heart, she already knew the outcome of their search, and her mind began to steel itself for what would come next. Grady emerged first, his tone laced with disappointment. "Nothing in the car." James frowned, but didn't loosen his posture. His hand still rested on his holster, a quiet threat that hung in the crisp morning air. "We're going to need you to come with us for questioning," he said, as if his voice alone could cement her compliance. For the first time, Lisa allowed herself a small smile, subtle, knowing, and entirely unshaken. It was the kind of smile that unnerved people, especially those who thought they held the upper hand. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, her voice calm, almost amused. The officers exchanged glances, their confusion apparent, but before they could respond, the low hum of an approaching vehicle cut through the moment. A black SUV rolled up behind them, its imposing frame gleaming in the sunlight. The door swung open, and out stepped Deputy Chief Martin. His presence landed like a thunderclap, the weight of his authority rippling through the tension-filled scene. "Is everything okay here?" Martin asked, his voice calm but loaded with an unmistakable edge. The two officers froze, their faces visibly paling as the pieces fell into place. Lisa Jefferson wasn't just a random driver they had pulled over. She wasn't someone powerless or without recourse. She was their boss, the newly appointed chief of police for Rivertown. James instinctively dropped his hand from his holster, stepping back as if he'd seen a ghost. Grady, always the brash one, suddenly looked like a deer caught in headlights, his bravado evaporating into thin air. Martin's eyes swept over the scene, his expression unreadable, but his disapproval almost tangible. He turned his attention to James and Grady, his voice like tempered steel. "What exactly is going on here?" James opened his mouth but faltered, stumbling over his words. "We pulled her over because the car matched the description of a vehicle involved in suspicious activity," he stammered. "Suspicious activity?" Martin echoed, the words hanging heavily in the air as he raised an eyebrow. His gaze shifted to Lisa, who remained perfectly still, arms crossed, her face an unreadable mask.
She didn't need to say anything.
Her silence was deliberate, letting the weight of their actions sink in. Martin, however, wasn't about to let them off so easily. He looked back at the officers, his expression darkening. "Let me get this straight," Martin began, his voice steady, but sharp enough to cut glass. "You pulled over a car for no apparent reason, asked a civilian to step out without providing a proper explanation, and now you're claiming you had cause to arrest her?" The silence that followed was deafening. James and Grady didn't answer. They couldn't. The realization of their colossal mistake was written all over their faces. James opened his mouth to protest, but no sound emerged. Grady, on the other hand, kept his eyes glued to the ground, his shoulders slumping as though he wished the earth would swallow him whole. Lisa finally broke the silence. Her voice was calm, but her words were razor-sharp. "Did you even run my license?" James flinched, startled by the direct question. We were in the middle of..." "That's a no, then," Lisa cut in, her tone slicing through his excuse. "You didn't even bother to check who I was before pulling me over, did you? You saw a black woman in a car that you decided looked suspicious, and that was enough for you?" Grady shifted uncomfortably, mumbling, "It's not like that, Chief." "Stop," Lisa snapped, raising her hand. "Let me guess. You thought I'd just go along with it? That I wouldn't question anything you did? That I'd comply with whatever you asked, no matter how out of line it was? Am I right?" A heavy silence followed. Neither officer could meet her piercing gaze. Martin stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "Do you two realize how serious this is? You just harassed the chief of police under pretenses. Do you understand the kind of damage this does to the department's reputation? The kind of message it sends?" Grady's face paled, and his hands trembled slightly as he stammered. "We didn't know. We weren't trying to..." "Trying to what?" Martin interjected, his tone ice cold. "Follow protocol? Show basic respect to the people you're sworn to protect and serve." James, desperate to salvage the situation, blurted out, "We just thought..." "No," Lisa interrupted, her voice firm. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't think. You didn't follow the procedure. You didn't treat me, or anyone for that matter, like a citizen of this town. From the moment you saw me, you treated me like a suspect. Nothing more." The weight of her words pressed down on the two officers, leaving them standing in stunned silence. Martin turned to Lisa, his expression somber. "What do you want to do?" Lisa let out a slow sigh, the fire in her eyes tempered, but still burning beneath the surface. This wasn't just about her, it was about accountability and setting a precedent for the entire department. "I'm not going to fire you," Lisa said, her words eliciting a momentary wave of relief from the officers. But it was short-lived. However, she continued, her tone hardening, "Make no mistake, there will be consequences. Effective immediately. I want both of them suspended pending an internal investigation. They need to understand the gravity of what just happened here. This isn't about saving face or avoiding bad press. It's about justice, fair treatment, and ensuring that something like this never happens again. Not just to me, but to anyone." Martin nodded solemnly. "Consider it done." Lisa stepped closer to James and Grady, locking eyes with them one last time. Her voice softened, but the steel in her tone remained. "If you're going to wear that badge, you'd better earn it. Every single day." She turned and walked away, leaving them to grapple with the weight of their actions. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more thought-provoking stories. Have a wonderful day.